Somebody's going to tell you that homeowners are returning their brand new home batteries by the thousand right now, and honestly, I get why you clicked on that. If you just spent $12,000 on a battery for your house and you're seeing headlines like that, your stomach drops a little. So let's deal with it straight away. That claim is false. Not exaggerated, not partly true. False. The real number behind the headline isn't a return, it's a recall. And there's a difference between those two words that matters more than you'd think. I spent 35 years wiring homes and hanging battery systems on garage walls, and I've watched enough scare headline nonsense scroll past to know the pattern by now. Somebody sees a scary number, strips out the context, and slaps it on a thumbnail. So today I'm going to show you exactly where that thousands number came from, walk you through the real safety recall behind it, and then get into the stuff that actually matters if you're shopping for a home battery in 2026. That includes a lawsuit against Generac you probably haven't heard about, 2 solar companies that went bankrupt and left their customers holding the bag, and the one system I'd actually put in my own garage. 10,500. That's the real number behind the viral claim, and it's not returns. It's Tesla Powerwall 2 units caught up in a Consumer Product Safety Commission recall, announced in November of 2025. A defect in a third-party battery cell meant some of these units could overheat, smoke, or in rare cases, catch fire. The commission logged 22 overheating reports and 5 actual fires with no injuries. Tesla's response was aggressive about it, to their credit. For any Powerwall still connected to the internet, they remotely drained the battery down to almost nothing, so it couldn't build up the heat that causes a fire in the first place. Then started swapping out affected units on site with technicians. That's not a homeowner deciding they hate their battery and boxing it up for a refund. That's a manufacturer pulling a defective part off the field before it hurts somebody, the same way a car company recalls a batch of airbags. It's serious, and it deserves attention. It's also completely different from the picture that Viral Post is painting, and mixing those two things up does the exact opposite of protecting you as a buyer. Pay attention to this next part, because it explains why that viral number falls apart the second you check it. While that recall was working its way through, home battery sales were having their best year ever. The industry hit a record 2.7 gigawatts of residential battery storage installed across the country in 2025, a jump of 92% over the year before. And in a national survey of people who already own a home battery, 91% said they'd make the same purchase again if they had to do it over. A market in real trouble doesn't post numbers like that. This one just had its best year on record while one manufacturer handled a defect the right way. And somehow, that math still doesn't add up for the people pushing the scary version. If batteries were actually failing and getting returned by the thousand, you wouldn't see installs going up 92% in that same 12-month window. Those two facts can't both be true at once. Only one of them is, and it's the one nobody's putting in a thumbnail because a record sales year doesn't get clicks the way a scary lie does. Now the Powerwall 2 story doesn't end with the recall notice, and this next part is where I'd want you to slow down if you already own one. In late November of 2025, a Florida homeowner named Arthur Brown filed a class action lawsuit against Tesla in federal court, case number 325 CV 1462 in the Middle District of Florida. The claim isn't that the battery is a scam. It's that the replacement process has been slow and messy in practice, and that some homeowners went weeks without the backup power they'd already paid for, sitting through storms with a discharged battery bolted to the garage wall because the fix hadn't reached their address yet. If you bought a Powerwall specifically so your fridge and your well pump would keep running when the grid dropped, and instead you're staring at a dead battery during an actual outage, that's a real grievance. It's the kind of thing worth knowing about before you sign, not after. One thing worth being precise about here. because this audience will absolutely catch me if I'm not. The recall only covers the Powerwall 2 sold between November of 2020 and December of 2022. The current Powerwall 3 uses a different battery cell supplier entirely and isn't part of this recall. If you're shopping today, that distinction matters. Don't let a defect on an older model scare you off the current one without checking whether it's actually the same part inside. So, if the mass return story is fake, what's the real story for 2026? There are a few, and they're all worth your attention before you sign anything, starting with the system I'd actually trust in my own house. That verdict belongs right here in the middle of this video, not buried at the end, where half of you have already clicked away. Out of everything on the market right now, the Franklin WH Power 2 and the Enphase Y Q Battery 5P are the two I'd point a homeowner toward first. Different approaches, same reason for trusting them. Both use lithium iron phosphate chemistry, the same battery chemistry that runs cooler and holds up through thousands of charge cycles without degrading the way older nickel-based chemistries do. The Franklin WH Power 2 gives you 15 kilowatt-hours of usable capacity and 10 kilowatts of continuous output per unit, with a 15-year warranty backed by 60 megawatt-hours of total lifetime throughput, which in plain English means it's engineered to be cycled hard, day after day, for a long time before it starts losing meaningful capacity. It's also a fanless design, which matters more than people think. Fewer moving parts in a garage means fewer things that seize up or get clogged with dust over 10 years. The Enphase YQ Battery 5P takes a different route. It's smaller per unit at 5 kilowatt-hours, but it's built out of 6 separate embedded microinverters instead of one central inverter. So if a single component inside fails, you don't lose the whole battery, just a fraction of its output while you wait on a repair. Enphase backs it with the longest warranty in this business, 15 years or 6,000 cycles, and they proved something important during the SunPower bankruptcy I'll get to in a minute. When that installer collapsed, Enphase kept honoring the microinverter warranties on systems that used their gear anyway, even though the company that sold and installed those systems was gone. That's the kind of thing that tells you what a manufacturer actually stands behind when the paperwork gets messy. Neither one is cheap. You're looking at somewhere around $13,000 to $16,000 installed for a single Franklin WH unit, and Enphase runs closer to $8,500 per unit, which actually makes it the most expensive option per kilowatt hour on this whole list. But when the electricians and generator techs in my comments ask me what actually holds up on a callback, these are the two names that keep coming up as the ones engineered like the manufacturer expected to be trusted with somebody's fridge and well pump, not just their App Store rating. Now, let's talk about the lawsuit you probably haven't heard about, because it involves a name almost everybody trusts: Generac. In January of 2026, a federal court gave preliminary approval to a $15 million class action settlement covering Generac's PWRcell home battery system, specifically a component called the SNAP-RS, which stands for Rapid Shutdown and is required by electrical code on grid-tied solar systems so first responders can safely de-energize panels during a fire. The lawsuit, consolidated into a multi-district case out of federal court in Wisconsin, alleges these SNAP-RS units can overheat, melt, or fail outright, with plaintiffs claiming failure rates as high as 50% on units manufactured before May of 2022. To be fair to Generac here, because accuracy is the whole point of this channel, they deny wrongdoing, and the court hasn't ruled on the underlying merits of those allegations, only approved the settlement process. But they set aside over $100 million in a legal provision to cover this and related matters. And that's not a number a company sets aside for a problem they think is small. That's the part that changes how I'd advise a homeowner shopping today. Generac makes a good product on paper. It's modular, It scales up to 72 kilowatt hours across multiple cabinets, and it integrates cleanly with their standby generators if you already own one. But a documented complaint pattern on a life safety component, paired with a separate firmware update investigation from another law firm claiming a remote software push bricked some systems entirely and left them inoperable, is exactly the kind of pattern that should make you ask more questions before you sign, not fewer. But this isn't even the story that's stranding the most homeowners in dollar terms right now. That title goes to two solar companies that went bankrupt and took people's warranties down with them. SunPower filed for Chapter 11. Bankruptcy in August of 2024. SunNova, one of the biggest names in residential solar financing, followed in June of 2025. Between the two of them, tens of thousands of homeowners were left holding 25-year contracts on systems worth well over $100,000 in some cases, with workmanship warranties voided overnight because the company that promised to honor them simply didn't exist anymore. One retiree paid over $36,000 for a system just 6 months before SunPower's filing hit. In Connecticut alone, the Attorney General's office fielded more than 60 complaints about a successor servicer that took over Sunnova's accounts and couldn't give homeowners a straight answer about who was actually responsible for warranty claims going forward. This is the story that's really behind a lot of the panic you're seeing online, dressed up as battery returns. The hardware bolted to people's garage walls isn't the problem here. The installers and financing companies collapsing underneath it are, and that leaves homeowners with systems nobody local will service anymore. If you're about to sign a 25-year lease or a big loan for solar and battery, that installer's financial health matters just as much as the equipment specs, and almost nobody checks it before they sign. So here's how you actually check it, because I'm not going to just tell you it matters and leave you to figure out how. Ask how many years the company has been operating under its current name, not a rebrand. Look up their standing with your state's contractor licensing board, which will show any active complaints or disciplinary actions. Check whether the manufacturer's warranty transfers automatically if the installer goes out of business, or whether it dies with the company, because that answer varies by brand, and it should be in writing before you sign anything. And be skeptical of any installer offering financing terms that seem to exist mainly to make the monthly payment number small rather than to make the deal make sense. If you're finding this useful so far, go ahead and hit subscribe. I cover backup power and home battery buyer protection every week. No affiliate links, no brand cheerleading, just what actually holds up. All right, so here's where things get personal, because the reasons homeowners actually regret these purchases have almost nothing to do with the hardware. The biggest reason, by a wide margin, is high-pressure sales. Door-to-door solar reps who show up, glance at your electric bill, and promise savings numbers that never account for your actual usage pattern or your utility's real rate structure. The Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Department of Energy jointly warned about this exact pattern back in August of 2024, flagging inflated pricing, forged signatures, and loan terms buried in fine print that homeowners never fully understood until the first bill came due. If a salesman won't give you 3 days to think it over without pressure, that's your answer right there. You have a federal right to a 3-day cooling-off period on most of these home sale contracts. Use it every single time, no exceptions. The second reason is one most reviewers won't even explain properly, so let's fix that right now. It's called a virtual power plant program, and some utilities offer homeowners a modest annual payment, usually somewhere between $500 and $1,500, in exchange for letting the utility pull power from your battery during high-demand events on the grid. Sounds great on paper. The catch is that a lot of homeowners sign up without fully realizing that means their battery might be partially drained by the utility right when a heat wave hits and they actually wanted that backup power sitting there for themselves. That's not a scam, just a real trade-off, and it needs to be explained clearly by the installer before you opt in, not buried on page 11 of a program enrollment form. And the third reason, the quiet one nobody wants to admit out loud, is that the payback math never worked in the first place. Somebody ran the numbers on an optimistic best case, ignored that their state's export credits were about to get cut, and ended up disappointed 5 years later when the battery hadn't come close to paying for itself the way the sales pitch promised. Speaking of which, that payback math looks meaningfully different in 2026 than it did even a year ago. And if you're shopping right now, you need the updated numbers before anybody else's pitch. The 30% federal residential clean energy credit, the one that's been subsidizing solar and battery purchases for years, expired for good on December 31st of 2025. If you're buying a battery with cash or a loan in 2026, that federal discount is simply gone. In California specifically, the net billing tariff, known as NEM3, cut the credit homeowners get for exporting solar power back to the grid by roughly 75%, which is exactly why a battery has gone from a nice-to-have to close to essential if you're a California solar owner trying to make the economics pencil out at all. California's storage rebate program, the Self-Generation Incentive Program, also closed its general funding for new applicants at the end of 2025. On top of all of that, tariffs on imported lithium battery cells jumped to roughly 28% starting in January of 2026, and that's pushing hardware prices up across every single brand on this list, not just the ones with lawsuits attached to their name. None of this means don't buy a battery. It means run the numbers for your actual state, your actual utility rate structure, and your actual outage frequency. Not the numbers a salesman ran for you on his tablet T in your driveway before the tax credit disappeared. Now, if you're reading all of this and thinking a full whole home battery system just isn't in your budget this year, there's a real alternative worth knowing about, and it's one I don't think gets enough credit on this channel or anywhere else. A large portable power station paired with a smart transfer panel, something in the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra range, can cover your essential loads. Fridge, some lighting circuits, your internet and router. A well pump if it's sized correctly, for a fraction of the cost of a permanently installed system. You're looking at roughly $6,000 for a base unit instead of $12,000 to $20,000 for a whole home battery. And there's no months-long permitting wait, no electrician on a ladder for 2 full days running new circuits. It won't run your central air conditioner, and it's not going to power your whole panel automatically without that smart panel add-on installed by a licensed electrician. So don't let anybody tell you it's a one-to-one replacement for a whole home system. But for a lot of households, it's the honest, do-this-instead option that nobody's pushing as hard, because there's a lot less commission sitting in a portable unit than there is in a $20,000 installed system. Whatever direction you end up going, there's one non-negotiable I'm not going to skip past, because getting this wrong can kill someone. Never let a battery or a generator backfeed your home's electrical panel without a proper transfer switch or interlock kit installed by a licensed electrician. Backfeeding without one can send power out onto lines that a lineman assumes are dead during an outage repair, and that's not a risk anyone should take just to save a service call. Follow your local code, pull the required permit, and let a licensed pro handle any panel work. I'm not being cautious here just for the sake of sounding cautious. This is the one step that protects your family and keeps your equipment warranty valid if something ever does go wrong. So here's the sacred cow I want to name directly, because dancing around it doesn't help anybody watching this. Of the major brands on the market right now, Generac is the one I'd be most careful with, not because their hardware is junk. Their generator business built a genuinely good reputation for a reason, and PWRcell integrates well if you already own one of their standby units. But between the Snap RS settlement, the firmware bricking allegations, and the fact that PWRcell still uses nickel manganese cobalt chemistry instead of the cooler-running lithium iron phosphate that's become the industry standard on every other name on this list, I'm watching that brand more closely than the others until the litigation actually resolves this fall. I'm not telling you to walk away from Generac entirely. I'm telling you to ask your installer pointed questions about Snap RS replacement status and firmware update history before you sign anything, the same way I'd ask if I were standing in your driveway with a clipboard. So here's where I land on all of this. The viral claim that started this video is false, and the real story underneath it, a legitimate safety recall handled correctly, a defect settlement working through the courts, and 2 bankrupt solar companies that stranded their own customers, is actually more useful to know than the fake one ever was. If I were putting a battery in my own house today, I'd be looking hard at the Franklin WH Power 2 or the Enphase IQ Battery 5P lithium iron phosphate chemistry both times, a real multi-year warranty backed by a company that's shown it honors that warranty, and an installer I'd already vetted for financial stability before I ever let them near my panel. And if the whole home price tag doesn't pencil out for you this year, a properly sized portable power station with a smart panel isn't a downgrade. It's just a different tool built for the same job. Before you sign anything, run through this short list. Confirm the battery chemistry is lithium iron phosphate, not the older nickel-based chemistry. Get the warranty terms in writing, including what happens if your installer goes out of business. Ask directly about any open recalls, settlements, or firmware issues tied to that specific model. Understand exactly what a virtual power plant enrollment means for your backup power before you opt in. And get 3 itemized quotes, not just one salesman's number on a clipboard. This story isn't over, by the way. The Generac settlement doesn't close out claims until August. The fairness hearing is set for October, and the Powerwall 2 replacement rollout is still working through its list of affected homeowners as we speak. I'll keep an eye on both and update you when there's something real to report. In the meantime, if you're shopping, ask your installer the questions I gave you today. Check their financial health before you check their sales pitch, and don't let a fake headline talk you out of good hardware or a real one talk you into bad hardware. That's the whole job.